the year 2000, Cartoon Network's Toonami delivered one of Japan's most significant cultural exports to American audiences, the anime series Gundam Wing. At the time, Gundam Wing was the latest installment of the sprawling franchise that began with 1979's Mobile Suit Gundam. While only a modest success upon its initial release in Japan, Gundam Wing exploded overseas, single-handedly popularizing the Gundam brand in the United States and beyond. The appeal of the series, especially to an 11-year-old kid like me, was obvious. Colorful giant robots fighting with huge guns and exotic lightsabers. But Gundam Wing holds a subversive message that planted a significant seed in my adolescent mind. That a show built on the premise of watching astonishing war machines do battle also asserts that those very machines shouldn't even exist. That attempting to achieve peace through war results in nothing but an endless dance of death. That peace is worth not fighting for. We can't fully recognize the provocative depiction of war and peace within the fictional world of Gundam Wing without first acknowledging Japan's historical reality. In 1853, after 265 years of near total isolation resisting European imperialism ended, Japan became an imperial power itself, eventually taking center stage against the Allied powers in the Pacific theater of World War II. The brutal combat that spanned across land, air, and sea was finally brought to a devastating end when the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. Japan's real-world reckoning in the aftermath of World War II has been complicated, but across the art forms of film, manga, and anime, a fascinating fictional trajectory can be traced. 1954 saw the release of Godzilla, a film that presents a potent metaphor for the destructiveness of nuclear weapons still fresh in the minds of the Japanese public. Godzilla also birthed the kaiju genre, huge monsters capable of wreaking large-scale havoc. Alongside the boom of Godzilla and kaiju came the development of the Mecha genre. The first of these mechs were super robots, such as Tetsujin 28 Go, which debuted as a manga in 1956 and was later adapted for television in 1960. Later, Mazinger Z made its stamp on the genre as the first pilotable super robot. But everything changed by the end of the 1970s with Yoshiyuki Tomino and the release of the aforementioned Mobile Suit Gundam. As Timothy Hornyak writes in his book Loving the Machine, the Art of Science in Japanese Robots, Gundam differed from super robots in several ways. For one, Tomino labeled it as a mobile suit, rather than a robot. Another key difference is that Gundam is not invincible. It has no superpowers that serve as ultimate weapons. Its arms are futuristic, but conventional. A beam rifle and sabers, hyper bazooka and cannons. That conventionality is reflected in the military-industrial complex propping up the world of mobile suit warfare seen in Gundam. Mobile suits don't have mythical alien origins. They're mass-produced weapons of war, designed and built by people to fight and destroy people. The original Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979 spawned dozens of TV shows and films, all set in the still ongoing Universal Century timeline. Gundam Wing, however, is set in the alternate After Colony timeline, and only includes the anime series along with its sequel film, Endless Waltz. The limited scope of Gundam Wing helps bring its multi-layered message about war and peace into especially sharp focus. The story centers on 5 protagonists: Hiro Yui, Duo Maxwell, Troa Barton, Katra Barbara Winner, and Cheng Wu Fei, young pilots of exceptionally powerful mobile suits, Gundams, who are sent to Earth from the subjugated space colonies. Their mission? To carry out targeted strikes against the colony's oppressors, the United Earth Sphere Alliance, and its secret military arm, Oz. As the series progresses, complex supporting characters are introduced, such as Zex Marquise, Treize Crucianata, and others who possess their own shifting allegiances and plans for achieving peace for humanity, through diplomacy, domination, or ultimate destruction.
If the Peace Million and Libra both crashed on that green planet, seasons would cease to exist. And then they'd be plagued with an everlasting winter.
Amidst all the unfolding chaos and violence, Relena Peacecraft stands as a world leader committed to creating peace through radical disarmament and global unification.
It only takes two to start a conflict. Therefore, we must become one with the space colonies. The Earth must look to coexist with outer space, and outer space must do the same. We must disarm Oz and appeal to the people in outer space. I ask each one of you as world leaders to accept these changes.
As the carnage between the Earth, space colonies, and various factions continues to escalate, more people rally to Relena's cause. Ultimately, as the Earth surrenders to the colonies to end the war, even Hero and Zex, in the midst of their final duel, must confess that their battle has no meaning. The two warriors then turn from fighting each other to saving the world. Perhaps it should come as no surprise that a show like Gundam Wing, possessing such an explicitly pacifist ethos, should originate in Japan, a country which, in 1947, made pacifism a cornerstone of its reconstruction in the wake of World War II. The official English translation of Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution reads, "Aspiring sincerely to an international peace based on justice and order, the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation, and the threat or use of force as means of settling international disputes. In order to accomplish the aim of the preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. The right of belligerency of the state will not be recognized." Despite Japan's national commitment to pacifist policy, the cultural reckoning with the violence and destruction that birthed the policy has been difficult. Gundam Wing debuted in Japan on April 7, 1995, 4 months before the 50th anniversary marking the end of World War II in the Pacific and Asia. As Genevieve R. Peterson observes in her doctoral thesis, at that time official commemorations abounded. Yet, despite the reflection and ubiquity of commemoration, critics labeled most of these efforts as unfocused, failing to engender any sharp images of the country 50 years after war's end. However, Japanese aren't forgetful. They're conflicted. As Peterson goes on to explain, 3 post-war narratives compete and coexist within Japan's collective consciousness. First, the heroic narrative asks if the Japanese can still be viewed as heroes, focusing on Japan's heroic wartime soldiers and leadership. By reclaiming the heroism of imperial Japanese soldiers, it seeks to project a Japanese future of heroic possibilities. Second, the victim narrative asks what can be learned from the victims of war, amplifying the voices of Japanese civilians who survived firebombing, the dropping of the atomic bombs, and other wartime violence. Its pacifist imperative demands healing and human security. And third, the perpetrator narrative seeks to understand the humanity of perpetrators, laying bare the violence of Japan's imperial era, acknowledging the suffering of other Asians during the war. Adopting a message of reconciliation usually mixed with pacifism, proponents argue this leads towards recovering Japan's moral backbone. Peterson argues that Gundam Wing is a fictional work in which all these narratives exist and interact. She writes, "Transcending the judgmental and traumatic referential work of reviewing the actions of real Japanese people, the post-war generation creators of Gundam Wing created a space in which it was safe to engage the gray areas between the 3 dominant narratives, probing Japanese memories about the Asia-Pacific War and what those memories reveal about Japanese attitudes towards their history and collective identity in the late 20th century. The series' main protagonist, Hiro Yui, represents a unique coalescence of these narratives: perpetrator, victim, and hero. From the opening episode, Hiro is guilty of perpetrating terrible acts of violence.
One more to go.
Both deliberately and unintentionally. He is directly responsible for the deaths of dozens, if not hundreds, of soldiers, not to mention the collateral damage affecting innocent people. But Hiro is undeniably a victim as well. Like all the Gundam pilots, he's only 15 years old. And Hiro, in particular, was either orphaned or kidnapped as a child and subsequently trained as an assassin. He is manipulated and weaponized from all sides. Moreover, throughout the entire series, Hiro displays suicidal ideation and even attempts suicide multiple times. But despite the perpetrator and victim narratives that dominate Hiro's story, he does ultimately manifest as a hero, in more ways than one. In the last episode of the series, having demonstrated mercy to Zex and empathy with Relina, Hiro must accomplish one final mission: destroy a rapidly descending piece of the spaceship Libra that threatens catastrophe on Earth. Hiro, who all this time has questioned the value of life, including his own, cries out,
I will. I will. I will. I will survive!
With his impassioned declaration, as his Gundam disintegrates, we realize Hiro's victory is double. The external victory of saving countless lives, and the internal victory of accepting his own self-worth. In the sequel film, Endless Waltz, Hiro and his fellow Gundam pilots must engage in one final battle against the rebellious forces of Decim Barton, who has twisted into his service soldiers who have been left feeling purposeless after the previous war's end, including Gundam pilot Wu Fei. The film powerfully interrogates what peace means for soldiers who have only known battle, and it delivers a potent answer.
Unless we stop this process now, more soldiers like ourselves will become necessary.
If that happens, history will continue to repeat itself.
Wu Fei, tell me, how many more people must we kill? How many more times must I kill that girl and her dog?
Contrary to the death and destruction the Gundam pilots wreaked throughout the series, in Endless Waltz they vow not to kill any opposing soldiers, just to incapacitate their mobile suits. They know that this is a losing strategy, even with their Gundams. But that's the point. Victory comes through defeat. The people see this nobility and sacrifice, which motivates them to resist Decim and take a stand, creating peace rather than merely claiming it. In the film's epilogue, Troa, Duo, Katra, and even Wu Fei all detonate their Gundams, eliminating the existence of all such destructive weapons.
After Colony 197, peace has returned to the people. And from this point on in history, weapons called mobile suits, including the Gundams, were never seen again.
Surely, some see the complete and successfully pacifist conclusion of the Gundam Wing saga as naive, unrealistic, and perhaps even outright foolish. This is even true in Japan, where, despite over 75 years of constitutional pacifism, there have been calls to amend or even revoke Article 9 of the Constitution.
Some 25,000 Japanese people rallied on Wednesday in Tokyo, calling for peace and protection of Japan's constitution, including the war-renouncing Article 9.
But Gundam Wing gives me hope. The truth is, like Hiro Yui, we are all, to some degree, perpetrators, victims, and heroes. We are capable of injuring others with what we say and what we do, and in turn be hurt by them. As Hiro says, everyone is weak. But perhaps counterintuitively, that weakness is what makes heroism possible. The hope is that we can learn from our past, act in our present, and together manifest a better future. That future doesn't have to be born out of fire with destructive weapons of war, but instead can be cultivated with tools in the hands of peacemakers.